ladies and gentlemen. In just under 3 minutes, just over 3 minutes, we will be starting the 42nd episode of the Old Humble Distilling Company Quarantine Happy Hour. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for the awesome, the unparalleled, there we go, voice acting talents and comedy talents of the one and only Rob Mungle. In just under 3 minutes. Get your drinks, get comfortable, settle in. Ladies and gentlemen, in just over a minute, the show will begin. Stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in. Now we have audio, we have video, and we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome back to the 42nd running of the Old Humble Distilling Company's Quarantine Happy Hour. I'm here with the one and only, the legend in Houston comedy scene. I'm going to embarrass the hell out of him here for a second. Legend of the Houston comedy scene. A guy who we've seen on stage since the, I guess, mid 90s. Prolific voice actor, radio voice. I don't think DJ is the right word for it, is it?
Yeah,
that wouldn't be the
radio personality.
Radio personality. There you go. The one and only, the legend himself, the Right Reverend Rob Mungle. Say hi to the people, Rob.
Hey, I'm very great to be here. How are you, sir?
I am fantastic, and I am glad to have you on the show. Thank you so much for Thank you so much for coming on the show. I generally start the show with an opening shot and thank yous to all of the people who have made this work, you included for coming
Oh,
on as my guest. So thank you for coming on
I
as my
appreciate
guest.
it.
Big
It is my
thanks over to
pleasure.
the Cabin Fever live stream network guys who over on Twitch, the collective of artists and performers who lost all their venues in the middle part of March and
Right.
decided, hey, let's do a show. So they not only did a show, they did a whole channel, and that is
Wow.
how that is where we're streaming live on Twitch. Uh, I guess I have to give thanks to YouTube. Tell those guys thanks for having let me have a channel, but they let anybody have a channel.
Sure.
So
Yeah, right.
thanks for everybody in YouTube
You
world
can
for
put
tuning
puppet
in.
shows. Yeah, you can put puppet shows on there if you want. It's YouTube.
Yeah, right. Uh, and so yeah, that's the opening shot. Cheers. You got anything to drink over there,
Cheers.
Rob? Or am I drinking in front of
Man,
you?
I did. I had a bottle of your stuff. Actually,
Oh,
I have
fantastic.
one of these old bottles.
Oh wow,
One of
that's the
the,
old school
I
label
yeah, well, it's the Christmas bottle.
and the
Got
light
Christmas
up.
lights
Yeah.
in it. Yeah, I found that. I thought I'd have that handy because I'm a company man to the end.
Oh, there you go.
There you are.
Well, I do have my we had a tradition in the early days of the show where I would do a signature cocktail for the episode, and I
Ah.
kind of got away from that because I ran out of ideas for cocktails. But today I actually have an idea for that cocktail. I was reminded of a
Okay.
cocktail that I've been wanting to do for a while, so I'm going to do this cocktail tonight.
All right.
It is a
Well,
cocktail that
there
I
are
was
only a finite amount of recipes I suppose you could come up with, so it runs out after a while.
Yeah, I know. You start running out, but I do have this. A friend of mine is profiling the Old Humble Distilling Company's whiskey for his next book, and in his
Ooh.
last book, he did a Texas cocktails book. Nico Martini, that is his real
Mm-hmm.
name, Nico Martini.
All
So
right.
I've got a whole book of cocktails now. I'm gonna run my way through these over the course of the next several shows. But
Sure.
this one's a special one. This one I picked up when I was flying bombers back in World War II.
Yeah,
That was a thing that happened.
I was there
So
too. Yeah.
yeah, so what happened was when our friends in the army came back with a keg of beer, they came back with a keg of their German beer.
Uh-huh.
And before our flight runs, when we had one of these kegs, we would take our beer, we would take our American whiskey, and
Mm-hmm.
me and the whole gang from the bomber squadron, we would fill up our shot like so. We would have the
Right.
beer like so, and then
Uh-oh.
as a group,
Oh.
we would count them down: three, two, one,
Mm-hmm.
and then, and that's how
Oh
we would
no.
celebrate the the
Yeah.
inauguration of our bombing runs. Not the early part of the war, mind you, because that was still
Sure.
pretty scary. The Germans thought they were going to win still in the early part of the war, but towards the end, we could have a couple of drinks before we started.
Right. Oh man. Yeah, that's I think you're supposed to slam that. That's how that
Yeah,
works.
but I have a whole show to do tonight.
All right, gotcha. Yeah.
back
We'll see.
back back in the
We'll
day, we
see.
would slam it, but not tonight.
I see. I got you.
But that's okay. So I'm using Beck's
Uh-huh.
for my German beer proxy tonight,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Whole
and
show.
it's got that nice meaty flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it mixes with the straight whiskey, that's a pretty solid mix there. It might have been better
Yeah.
with our special reserve.
Well, I'm not a beer guy myself.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that looks rough. That looks rough, man.
it's
Yeah.
not bad. I mean, the beer itself, Beck's has a lot of flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give it that. And it
Yeah.
probably would have been better with my special reserve, but I didn't want to dump my special reserve into a beer.
Sure, sure.
So
Well,
that's how it goes.
a lot of people say there's different tastes of beer, and to me, it's all one flavor. It's just beer. I
Tastes
don't
like
see it.
beer.
It tastes like beer, and I'm not a fan.
Well, that was actually going to be one of the things I wanted to talk to you about tonight because I was
Mm-hmm.
in my show prep.
Ah.
I watched as many interviews as I could find with you, basically it was a Comic-Con circuit, uh,
Mm-hmm.
rep- amateur reporters, I guess they were,
Yeah.
Comico
Well,
and
we'll call them
Yukimo
to
and
be generous. We'll call them semi-pro. How's that?
Jared and people like that.
Yeah.
And they'd all ask the same questions. How'd you get started? How long you been doing it? How does it translate? And all that stuff to stand
Mm-hmm.
up and da, da, da. One question you were asked
Yeah.
and you lit up, and I wanted to talk more about that. She talked about the Whiskey Brothers and the stuff y'all
Mhm.
do on stage, but she talked about your favorite whiskey, and I already know what your favorite whiskey question.
Sure.
What's your least favorite whiskeys? Like
Uh-oh.
the
Oh, you broke
whiskey
up
that
there a second.
you wouldn't have again, the whiskey you
Yeah.
couldn't finish, the least favorite whiskey that you've ever had.
Least favorite. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's not even a difficult question at all. As we know, we do the podcast, and it's the Whiskey Brothers, and we have different whiskeys from around the world that are given to us. Viewers, listeners, they send in their samples. About a year into it, we were sent something called Canadian Crown, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Texas Crown, but it's made in Canada.
Ah.
That's how stupid this fucking thing is. Uh, but somebody said, "Hey, y'all are from Texas. You'll like the Texas Crown." And it was the single worst, most disgusting thing I've ever had in my mouth. And I once made out with the Queen of England, so it was awful.
The
Just
Queen of
pure.
like the Queen of England, or like
I don't know. That's what he said.
the highest ranking gay person in
Yeah,
England.
yeah, probably that. I don't know. But it was the Texas Crown is the single worst whiskey. I wouldn't wish that on somebody who was an enemy. It's just vile,
I,
not good at all. It was tart. It was, it had a hint of cactus. I think it was rough going down and even worse coming back up. And it was the single most, and to a man in the room, to everyone who tasted it, they would agree with me that it's the single worst whiskey they've ever had. And I don't think you can find it anymore. Hopefully, they burn down the distillery.
well, I will stay neutral in this type of conversation and simply say that
No
if it
need,
sells,
no
somebody
need. It's
drinks it,
garbage.
but
No need for neutrality. And some things, all that it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing, and it's crap.
I
Texas
will
Crown's
say,
crap.
however, that every single house that's ever been built, at least in the modern era since plumbing, has a hole in the bottom of the sink that will fix bad whiskey.
Ah,
And
there
there's
you
a
go.
way to solve those problems
Hmm.
if you accidentally bring home something that you just simply can't finish.
And I don't know if it was on, if you can find it at a discount bin or some gas station to change your, to clean your
It's over in
spark
the auto
plugs.
parts section.
Yeah, I don't know what it's for, but it's not for drinking. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you described it as nobody got drunk off of it because we couldn't
No,
finish the bottle.
because you couldn't finish it. That's true. You cannot. You can give it to 12-year-olds because nobody's going to get drunk because nobody can finish it. Yeah,
It's a perfectly safe underage whiskey.
yeah, because nobody will finish it.
Now you had
It
also
was the
mentioned
worst thing.
I'd seen a couple of interviews where you had mentioned Japanese whiskeys,
Yes.
um, and the differences between Japanese whiskeys and American whiskeys.
Hmm.
Expound on that for us, shall you? Uh,
I don't know. You probably have tried Hibiki. I'm sure if you're not, you've heard of it, right?
yes,
Yeah, everyone's heard of it.
I've been around the
Um,
block a couple times. Yeah.
yeah, it's been a while. I don't. Apparently, it was a Japanese manufacturer who went over to either Ireland or Scotland and learned from some masters over there and brought back different techniques to Japan and developed Hibiki. And the first batch was just absolutely delicious. That's like you can put that on a pancake. It was
Yeah.
so good. It was smooth and sweet and went down without any burn, and it was just absolutely amazing. And it flew off the shelves, of course.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but now, I mean, now you can't even find it for less than I think $400 in some places.
Sure.
You know, and but it's without question the finest I've ever had, and certainly the finest we have ever had on the show. And when somebody sent it to us, it was still going for about $100 a bottle. So this was probably 8, 9 years ago, and since then, it's 400 or 500 now for the same bottle. But we got it when it was cheap, and we polished it off in an afternoon, not knowing how valuable. If I knew now, I would have had one sip and then sealed it back up and
Drinking
put
the
it on
damn
eBay.
whiskey like a bunch of degenerates.
Yeah, we were like, sailors on leave. It was like, oh, Japanese whiskey. How good can this be?
Were
Well, it's
you a,
amazing.
you were a big whiskey drinker before the Whiskey Brothers?
Yeah, that's why we got the name.
Okay. Well, yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if it was one of those chicken and egg things where you started the show,
Yeah.
doing
Well,
Whiskey
it
Brothers
was.
in order to get free whiskey, and then you became a connoisseur,
Yeah.
or if you were a connoisseur before, and
I wouldn't say connoisseur. I drank whatever's cheapest and easy
an
to get. But
enjoyer of the booze.
yeah, but it was really a brand name that we thought it had. Myself and Bill Miller, who we just started the Whiskey Brothers as a comedy team that did live stand-up shows,
Hmm.
and we thought it was a nice provocative. I came up with the title actually, driving over the 610 bridge in Houston, Texas, that goes over the ship channel,
Yeah.
the giant bridge. I was listening. I was trying to come up with a name, and we had, it was a takeoff of. Back then, we were looking for something like the Texas Outlaw Comics. We thought that was a great brand name, and so we wanted to come up with something similar. And as I'm driving over the bridge, I'm listening to Metallica's "Whiskey in the Jar," the cover of that
Hmm.
song Metallica did, and I said, "Whiskey, that's a nice. It's provocative and it's kind of cool and sexy, and it's the two of us, so let's be the Whiskey Brothers." And that's where the name came from.
Well,
And
that's
so
cool.
that jug band in North Carolina, that also is called the Whiskey Brothers. I can give them the full story of how I got it, and they can fuck themselves if they think I stole their name. So there you go. I stole it from Metallica.
Yeah, because back in the '90s, it wasn't like you were going out and finding jug bands,
Yeah,
backwoods jug bands to find names, good ideas for names of
right. Yeah,
comedy groups. I
yeah, and
mean,
that's and we also wanted to have we decided we didn't want to have comedy in the title at all. Is that because
good
we wanted
move.
to be so people would be like, oh, that's kind of an what are they? What do they do? It helps ask questions, because we everything was, back then everything was like an improv group, and they had uh, just ridiculous puns for
You
their
have opinions on
names.
improv groups.
Yeah, I have thoughts, but everything was like it's like everything was silly and it was kind of goofy, and we didn't want any of that. And the places we were playing, it's like the Chuckle Hut or the
Hmm.
Giggle Shack and stupid names like that. And we wanted to be a little bit more edgy and have a little bit of a provocative title. So that's where we came up with that.
So you're saying you didn't do Sunday afternoon matinees for
No,
the
not really.
after
Those
church
are,
buffet crowd?
yeah, few and far between that. Not a lot of those.
So yeah, back in the, I guess we're talking mid '90s when the Whiskey Brothers came about. That was when the outlaw comedy scene in Houston was kind of
It was
coalescing.
winding
And
down. Yeah, it was that was around 85 to about 90. That
okay,
the guys who were big in that, and they had all gone their separate ways, and that sort of that style of comedy was still there and
yeah,
was still prevalent, but as a group the outlaw comics broke up
right,
and they did their own thing, and so that had winded down, and we wanted to come up with something. And this was about 96, 95,
okay.
96, and
So
so
this
we
was the
wanted to do
next wave
something.
after,
Yeah,
like
we
the
wanted to
outlaw
be the.
I guess for you describe for them what
Mhm.
outlaw comics was, because it seems to me that it was like folks that came to Houston to
Yeah.
get a voice, and then they kind of grew up and moved out.
Well, I hate to speak for them, but I can just tell you my perspective
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what I've heard from them and the way
Because in the
they were
'80s, I
all
was 7, so
right. Sure, and I was 37.
yeah, you were
So
you were a grown ass man,
right,
your
and
third
well, that
lifetime.
was a group of comics, and now it's not exactly woke, but back then it was 6 or 7 white guys,
Yeah,
you know, and they all had a kind of a similar mindset and a sort of way they did comedy was certain edgy, and this was Bill Hicks and some less. He was the biggest name, of course, and Sam Kinison
hmm,
he was a peripheral member, and but they had guys like Andy Huggins, Riley Barber, Jimmy Pineapple, not as big names, but all very funny comedians and great performers. And they all had a similar mindset. They had a similar way of performing that was a little edgier, a little dirtier, certainly a little dirtier. Um, and they were more your midnight rock and roll kind of comics.
yeah,
And so they all did these shows together in tandem, and they had different members, some guys from Austin that would come in and out. And so they had a rotating cast of guys, and they would do shows under the Texas Outlaw Comic banner,
sure,
which would include some sketches and mostly stand up. And they would do it in places like Fitzgerald's and Rockefeller's, uh,
big
the
rooms.
big venues in the Houston area back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, these weren't
And
40 40 seat
No.
clubs. These
Yeah,
were
they were, and they were
venues.
putting, yeah, they were playing big venues. They had the Tower Theater, which was about 1,000 seater, and they would sell
Yeah.
that out for a couple of nights. And so they were a big deal. So much so that back in the 80s, comedy in Texas, it's Houston in particular, because Houston had the very first comedy club in the South when it started the comedy workshop when it started in the early 80s. That was the first comedy club in the South. And so people would come from around the country. It was like a third coast thing. You had LA, New York, and you had Houston.
Yep.
And some guys would from Dallas and Arkansas and Louisiana and West Texas, they would make their way to Houston and get their start in the comedy workshop.
Hmm.
And they started doing, that's how Hicks started and all that sort of thing. And that's the legend of that. And so I came around at the tail end of that. I was, well, they had had their prime and those guys had moved on to LA, New York. Hicks and Kinnison had become big names.
HBO
Um,
special names.
sure. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And they were on Letterman and whatnot. And then I started, and so I started, came around on that tail end. And I started in 94. And by then, that had its wave and those guys were gone and we were the new breed of
Hmm.
guys. And so myself and Bill Miller, who was a comic at the time, and we decided we wanted to try to stake our flag, and kind of make our way in the Houston comedy tradition. And that's where the Whiskey Brothers came from,
Yeah.
out of that. Yeah.
And at that time period, I guess Texas was a big enough market that y'all could still. I mean,
Sure.
even is now. You
Yeah.
could tour between Houston and Dallas and San Antonio and
Yeah.
bump
In
around. It was like a
94,
country unto
between
itself.
94 and 99, 2000, you could work in Texas and work, 3 weekends a month without ever leaving the state.
Yeah.
There was 4 clubs in Houston alone. Um, there were a couple in San Antonio, 3 or 4 in Dallas, and then the small at Waco and the Wacos and Huntsville and all those other the B markets. They had something that was going on a Friday night at some Holiday Inn or whatever. And then you could go into Louisiana. So there was no shortage of work. Beaumont had a club that was there for years. Um, and so there was no shortage of work back then.
Yeah.
It's a different scene now, of course, but
It's a
those are fun.
it's tough economics to run a comedy club these days. I mean, not just
It's
because of COVID.
impossible.
I mean, like before
Yeah,
the
right.
apocalypse, running a comedy
It's
club.
over. Yeah,
Say again.
comedy clubs are dead. Comedy clubs are done.
Yeah, I know
Um,
it's really tough economics because you're talking you got to put 100 people in seats. They give away the tickets, two
mhm,
drink minimums, and unless
yeah.
you're a stripper who banged the president, you're not putting butts in seats.
Sure. I mean, there's no way to do it. I mean, the model worked in 1985 and up until 2005, basically.
What
The
changed?
model for a comedy club worked, but
What?
nowadays you have people expect different things from a, a going out experience.
Hmm.
And actually, you have people in their 20s, 30s who don't have the attention span, who don't want to watch
Ah,
3 acts on a Friday night, a 2 hour show with people that I mean, they'll go see somebody that's famous, that they've appreciated, a
hmm.
Dave Attell and that sort of thing. Those guys still do fine, but just the notion of, hey, let's go see 3 guys or 3 girls talk about their dicks for whatever
Yeah,
for 2 hours, and there's just not a value in it anymore.
it's the
And
type of
and,
scene
and
where
it's
people would go and
it's almost
watch.
like vaudeville, you know.
Well, yeah, yeah, where people would just go and watch a show.
Yeah,
We're going to go to the
and I
movies
don't
and
blame
watch
them. I don't want to go
whatever's
see
on the
it either.
screen, but there's no
Mhm.
such thing as whatever's on the screen because there's 36 screens and you can watch exactly what you're going to look for.
Sure.
I guess that's the same thing in the theater when people are going to see comics. They're looking for a comic and not
Yeah.
comedy.
Sure.
Okay.
And that's kind of what we came up with the Whiskey Brothers. That was, we thought, you know, a name like Rob Mungle or Bill Miller, you might get famous, but that's not recognizable. But if you have a brand name, the Whiskey Brothers, people will remember that.
Sure.
And so that's what we wanted to do.
And then the
And
show's the experience
exactly.
and you can
And
interchange parts.
hmm
How many
yeah.
members of the Whiskey Brothers have there been over the years? There's you and Bill
uh,
Miller. There's the
yeah,
three you
we
got
started
now,
it.
Slade and Trey and
Well, I hate to
Sam.
sound like Spinal Tap here, but there's been over 74 members of this band. And that's not an exaggeration. Uh, there has been different incarnations
Well, since I was introduced to the Whiskey Brothers, there's been Dale and Kiki and you and Slade and Trey
Yeah. Well, there's
and
two
Sam.
worlds here.
So
There's
that's
two worlds.
6.
Yeah, there's two worlds.
Well,
There's
we're talking about
yeah,
podcast.
the
specifically.
podcast world. Whiskey Brothers is what we started with: John Wesley and Sam Damaris, Slade Ham, and myself.
Mhm.
Those 4, and that ran for many years. And Sam goes off to LA, and he comes back every now and then. John has got other things, and he's out. But we've replaced it with Kiki Maroon, who's a very funny burlesque entertainer, Dale Cheeseman, and now Trey Tutson, a young comedian, very funny kid. And oh god, we had 3 or 4 others that were slipping in and out over the years. So there's probably in the podcast era, there's been about 10, I would imagine.
Sounds right.
Before that, we would do shows in different venues. It was a live stand-up and sketch show that we did, and there was different incarnations and iterations of that. We had one where we all dressed in tuxedos, and we called that the Rat Pack version, where we would go up on stage together like the Rat Pack,
Like the
and we
Rat
would
Pack.
do our act. And as the Rat Pack would sing a song with the other guys on stage, we would do our stand-up with the guys on stage.
So which one was Sammy Davis?
That was Sam Damaris.
Of course.
The black guy. And that was the joke. That was our joke. We had the one black guy when you have a Rat Pack show, and so we had to make it Sam Damaris. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of those guys. And that was a rotating cast between 7 to 10 guys. So there's 20 people right there who've been the Whiskey Brothers. And, various incarnations before that even. And so there's been enough.
Yeah, and your Christmas shows are big extravaganzas. You've got bands and comics and burlesque and all the stuff on the Christmas shows. That's a big damn deal by itself.
Yeah, we have fun with our Christmas shows.
Yeah,
those are always fun, and I don't know what we're going to do this year.
I'm looking forward to the next one after the apocalypse.
Yeah, right. Once the apocalypse is over.
Stupid apocalypse.
Okay, and that's another one we took out. That Bill Miller and I, the Christmas show idea was done by two brothers here in town. T-Shawn Shannon, who was a writer, who started comedy here and went to go write for Saturday Night Live and various other TV shows. And his brother, Charlie Shannon, was a comedian here in town who passed away 10, 12 years ago. But the Shannon brothers were comics who had were on the periphery of the Texas outlaw comics, but they did their own thing, and they did the Shannon Brothers Christmas up until probably 2001 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And they stopped doing it here in town. So the Whiskey Brothers kind of stepped in, and we had the Whiskey Brothers Christmas, because they asked the Laugh Stop asked us, hey, we don't have a Shannon Brothers Christmas. Do the Whiskey Brothers want to do something? So we said, yeah, we'll do a Whiskey Brothers family Christmas. And so that's what we've been doing that ever since. So
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Looking over here, I was looking over at the chat to see if anything had come in over chat for questions. No. Nothing quite yet. I'm looking at the we have viewers out there. They just don't have questions yet, so that's fine.
Yeah. Well, that's fine.
Jeff mentioned that he has contacts up in Canada where he can get some of that.
Oh, that Texas Crown. He can have it. He can keep it up there. And I don't understand why they would sully the name of Texas up in Canada with their swill, but whatever.
I'll tell you the worst whiskey I've ever had. I'll tell you this. It's named after a hero of the Texas Revolution. I'm looking at the bottle right now. A hero of the Texas Revolution, of whom we have a giant statue of in the Sam Houston National Forest.
Sam Houston?
I won't mention the specific name of the whiskey, but it's made in Wisconsin, and it tastes like cough syrup.
Ugh.
And I didn't even feel good enough about pouring it in the sink. I mean, it's
good.
It's up there taunting me. And
is it Sam Houston whiskey? I went to Sam Houston State.
Notice I didn't say no. Yes, communications or marketing? Marketing, right?
A radio and television marketing and management degree.
There you go.
With a minor in history. But I was there when they were building the Sam statue. I had graduated about a year before they actually got it up. And that was all the talk. Like, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing. You get this stupid fucking statue up here that people are going to drive by. And I was like, okay,
And honk
whatever.
on the freeway.
Yeah. I don't understand the need for this giant statue, but whatever.
Gives me something to honk at when I'm on the freeway.
Yeah, right.
That is a fact about you that you have said several times on the podcast. And every time you say it on the podcast, everyone on the podcast is very surprised.
What's that?
That you went to college at Sam Houston State University.
Yeah, I don't get it. Anybody can get in there. It's not hard. I mean, if you have a checkbook, you can get into Sam Houston State. It's not exactly the Harvard. You don't need to be a legacy to get in.
My great-great-grandpappy went to Sam Houston State.
Yeah, right.
I didn't even have to fill out any forms.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, nobody has to fill out forms.
Yeah. Nowadays, you just need an app.
Right. I mean, they've got a. Is it Sam Houston that has the? It's Sam Houston. They have the lumberjack program, or is that Stephen F. that has the lumberjack program?
That's our hated rivals, the Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks.
Yeah, the hated rivals on the other freeway.
Yeah. We are the Sam Houston Bearcats.
And they were the lumberjacks, right?
Yeah, if you've ever seen a bearcat, it's the least fierce-looking animal in the history of the world.
Is that an actual thing?
It's like a diseased rat.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So my family, my parents, both of them, went to Northwestern State in Louisiana, which is the hated rivals of Stephen F. Austin for their Caddo statue. I'm not even sure what the thing
great
is.
Whatever the battle of the piney woods is Sam Houston and Stephen F. Austin.
So Sam Houston's hated by everybody on both sides.
Pretty much, yeah.
Or Stephen F. is hated by everybody on both sides.
Yeah. Sam Houston certainly hated by the TABC, that's for certain. Because it's the worst time. They close it. They stopped serving at midnight. That was the worst. No, I'm sorry. It was even worse. No, it was 1 o'clock on Saturday, but midnight every other day of the week.
1 o'clock on 1 o'clock on Saturdays. Mm-hmm. Good God.
Yeah, you could go to 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays in Huntsville. It was, but the Whataburger was 24 hours. So there you go.
Yeah. Mo tells me that he's dropping his daughter off at Sam Houston this Saturday. So congratulations, Mo. You've got a college girl.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I'm sure she'll do swimmingly. What I love about Sam Houston State is that there is a sorority row. I mean, Sam Houston is Huntsville, Texas, is known for two things: the prison system,
prison rodeo,
the college.
Yeah,
and the rodeo. Yeah,
former
the prison system
rodeo.
And the school, Sam Houston State.
Yep.
Sorority row. There's a road that runs next to what's known as the walls unit.
Mm-hmm.
And which is it's called that because they're the huge walls, and it's where they used to execute people. But there's a road that runs right here on the wall. The walls unit is on the left side of the road. Sorority row is on the right-hand side, which just speaks to me as the premise of a horror film. But
don't accidentally go to the wrong sorority house.
Yeah, I guess they just put that over. Look, that's what you're never going to see again, guys. Here in this prison.
And see, I had friends that went to both Nacogdoches and Huntsville when I was in college down in Houston, and for I know I made road trips up to both, but they all kind of merge into one tableau of road trips north out of Houston to skating rinks with bars and
bowling alleys,
generic dormitories and bowling alleys. That's pretty much it. That's all we. They were fun
difference
towns.
Between Nacogdoches and Huntsville. There's a nickel's difference between the two of them. There's nothing. They both have a Pizza Hut, and that's about it.
Well, the woods are on the left side for Nacogdoches, and they're on the right side in Huntsville. That's pretty much.
This is crazy. This is interesting, though. I would have to see if it was still there. I'm certain it has to have been torn down by now. But near Sorority Row, there was a winding road that runs just outside of the college. They have Sorority Row, and they have the Walls unit, and I mentioned that road. It's a winding road, and my friend lived in what used to be a warehouse. It was a commercial warehouse that was built clearly in the 60s. It was brick, one story, old school warehouse that had since been abandoned. But he and his roommate, somehow they bought it, and they took one small corner of it and turned it into their living area. The rest of it was basically condemned. So one night we're there, and he would always throw massive parties because they had this basically empty warehouse where they could do whatever. And so we were there enjoying ourselves as you do because the bars close at midnight there in that piece of shit town. But we noticed the door that was next outside of where they lived, and it was clearly part of the structure of the old warehouse. And so we go, wait, where does this go? And he goes, I don't know. We've never gone in there. So let's open it up. Maybe it's,
This
it
is the
could be
premise of a
Al
horror
Capone.
story.
Yeah, it's Al Capone's prison
Yeah.
or whatever. So we open it up, get our flashlights, and it goes underneath the warehouse. It's
Okay.
below it. It's like a sub basement. And so we actually go down there and we discover a bar that has been utilized in the 1970s. And it's dust.
Well, wait, in the
bars,
70s?
It had to have been clearly in the 70s because this was 80. No, this was, it probably, at the latest, it was 79, 80, 81. That's the latest it would have been open. And we couldn't find any record of it. And we went back and looked, but we went down there and there were pool tables and there was a bar and it looked like, and it was dust everywhere. And we found there was a stage and we found old flyers where Stevie Ray Vaughan had played there.
No kidding.
And in like 79, we found all these flyers of bands in there. But there was no power to it. But we cleaned it up and had massive parties.
Of course you did.
Yeah, and but apparently, I don't know if that's still there or not. If it has to have been torn down because this was 25 years ago.
So was Walker County a dry county back in the 70s?
That I don't know.
Okay.
But this was like a secret.
Because it sounds like a full-on speakeasy, like the
it does.
like the casino that they had on the pier in Galveston.
Yeah,
that
right.
You had all the winding roads or the winding hallways. So, by the time the cops got to the back of it, by the way, guys, that was a real thing in Galveston all the way up into the 80s.
Yeah,
where they had a casino in the back of a pier in Galveston.
Bring those back. But it was weird. It was just a door in the warehouse that we said, "Oh, where does that go?" And he goes, and it went down about a story,
Wow.
and it was underground, and there was this bar, and it was a full on. It looked like it had been raided, and everybody left and locked the door and never went back.
It just never went
pool
back.
Table still had pool cue. They had pool cues in there. The pool tables had the balls and everything. It was just dust everywhere.
I'm not sure if the most remarkable thing about this is that it existed or that y'all were already drinking. You find you find this door and you're like, well, let's go check it out in the woods in Huntsville next to a prison.
Right.
And you just grab flashlights and a beer in one hand and a flashlight in the other. And you're like, let's go for it. And you keep going down the stairs and you keep going and you keep going. I'm not
trust
sure
me, I was not the first one to go down. I was bringing up the rear, but yeah.
I'll make sure the path is clear this way, guys.
Yeah, I'll be here with the girls. Just yell, just let me know if you find a light switch.
So Stevie Ray Vaughan played down in a speakeasy underground in Huntsville. That is the damn.
It was great. There was a stage down there, and it was you could put 200 people in there.
Cool.
It was the oddest little discovery that and I would love to go back and see if it's still there, but I doubt it seriously.
Well, now I know what I need to install in my distillery.
Yeah, an underground speakeasy. And again, I don't know that it would be a speakeasy, but it was to us.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Walker County was a dry county for years. I mean, Texas still has dry county. Tomball's in a dry county. If you're not in a club, I don't know if
just outside of Lufkin is one too.
Yeah, that's
that's where they have all the liquor stores right outside Lufkin on 59.
And every single one of them is called County Line Liquor.
Yeah,
clever name, guys.
Yeah.
Anyway,
going when we would play in Texarkana, there was a gig that was there for years. Texarkana is on the border of Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas.
As far northeast as you can get.
Yeah, and there's different corners of town where across the street you can get a drink, but you can't on the other side of the street.
You got to drink that on that side of the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we would play that gig, and there would be the gig we played was on a dry side. And so there was a liquor store on the other side of the street. And so they'd buy other liquor and come to the show. And it was a BYOB show.
Yep.
There's a liquor store right across the street.
Yeah. I remember back when we went to family gatherings up in Lake DeGray in Arkansas, there was a dead zone where
Mm-hmm.
and Lake DeGray was just on the far end of that dead zone, so we had to get beer. My parents had to get beer because I was
Sure,
10.
sure.
Uh,
Right.
we had to. We're coming across like a gas station. Like my dad says, we have to stop and get beer here because if we don't get beer here, we're not going to get beer
There's
anywhere.
nothing.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, and that was just past Texarkana because Lake DeGray is just inside, or just barely inside of Arkansas, about forever
Yeah.
from here.
It's there's weird liquor laws all around the
All
state of
kinds of
Texas.
weird stuff.
It's a
Yeah,
patchwork designed by Baptists, and it's just the worst.
because
It's
this
just
is
the
the South,
worst.
and that's how things work.
Yeah.
We
It's
don't
like
want
we got like
we don't want people buying alcohol on Sunday because they might lead to
yeah.
dancing
Mm-hmm.
or something.
That's the worst. I can remember when you couldn't buy anything on Sunday.
Hell, I remember
Everything
when
was
you couldn't.
closed.
Yeah, you couldn't go get lumber
Yeah, the
back in the
mall was
early
closed.
'80s.
Yeah, the mall was closed. You
Yeah.
couldn't even get blue jeans. That'll lead to dancing.
Well, if they're the right shape
Yeah,
and size.
yeah. You had to you had to buy blue jeans on the black market in Texas back in the '80s.
You buy 2 pair on Saturday
Yeah,
so you could
because you
rest
don't
on
know what's
Sunday.
going to happen on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
man, I tell you what, actual honest to God denim, that is the God's fabric. But when you talk about the stretch denim, the denim that actually
Mm.
has the spandex infused with the denim,
Yeah.
man, that is revolutionized the rodeo industry.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
That has made rodeo going a
Mhm.
considerably different environment because
Yeah. Well, you better enjoy your rodeo now. That's probably going to be the next thing to go after the circuses. There won't be any rodeos anymore.
well, there'll
Well,
at
I
least be
get
the concerts.
yeah,
That's all
yeah.
it'll be.
I think horse racing might be before rodeo, but who
Yeah.
knows? They might be both be gone in 30 years. They'll have robots running the Kentucky Derby, which wouldn't be
Robot
bad.
horses in the Kentucky Derby. That'd be something.
Yeah, the
Man.
Kentucky Derby's in a few weeks. It's in September now. They pushed it back
Oh, is it now?
But
Well,
because
that's
of
nice.
Corona. They usually run it in the first week of May, and now it's going to be the first week of September.
Yeah, the official whiskey of the Kentucky Derby mint julep is the
Mm.
Woodford Reserve.
Have you ever had a
Woodford
mint julep?
Reserve, made in Kentucky and almost as good as our whiskey.
Ah, have you had a mint julep before?
I have had a mint julep,
I don't
and
care.
I know it's
It tastes like Crest and whiskey. I
so
don't understand the big deal.
the recipe for a mint julep is whiskey, water, sugar, and mint, like
Yeah.
muddled up mint leaves, and it's
So Crest. Just
exactly it's crest. So
take
what
a
we
tube of
do,
Crest and pour it into a bottle of whiskey, and there you go.
our version of the julep is
Hmm.
whiskey lemonade and just a dash of peppermint extract so that
Ah,
instead of water and sugar we actually bring something to the party that tastes like
yeah,
something. So it's a
got it.
little whiskey lemonade and just a hint of peppermint, not enough to taste
Hmm.
it, not enough to taste like toothpaste because that's
Yeah,
wretched.
yeah.
But our Colonel Angus cocktail is our version of the mint julep.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
the little the extract. That's a good
Yeah.
twist.
Well, nobody
Yeah,
has
the
ever complained about getting a little Colonel Angus at the distillery. They've all left with a smile on their face whenever I've given them Colonel Angus, and they've
uh-huh.
always recommended it to their friends and sent them back to get a little more Colonel Angus.
Right. Everyone loves Colonel Angus. Have you? That's one of my things. The bucket list is to go to the Kentucky Derby. I want to go to that one year.
I
I
would
haven't been to
love to
that.
do it.
Yeah.
See the hats and see the whatever and the
Hmm.
horses and just and
Yeah.
my I, I I would love to be able to go there, talk with some highfalutin hoity-toity society types, and
Hmm.
just be a full-on fucking hillbilly.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, it's wonderful with the horses." I'm like, "Yep, they don't smell like shit much either." Just
Yeah.
to just to see the
Well, you want to
gasp
have
and
that in
the
you'll
pearl
have to go to the
clutching.
infield for that. Yeah, you can go to the infield for that. For the $20 ticket when you stand on the grass with all the other barefoot hillbillies and piss on each other.
Have you met
I don't
my
want to do
wife
that.
and sister? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'd rather be in the hoity-toity section.
Where it doesn't smell like the horses.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get you.
doesn't smell like piss and defeat with nothing but torn up race tickets everywhere.
Yeah, but if they
Yeah.
put the shoes on, it doesn't smell like defeat. Boom! Puns for the win.
Hey-o. Hey-o.
I'll
There
leave
you
the
go.
comedy to the comics. Sorry. Um,
Yeah, I'm retired. That's all right.
yeah, right. You're retired.
Yeah.
I saw the tweet. You're coming back. I'm not. You're not fooling anybody.
Yeah,
But then the
well, if they
apocalypse
ever
happened. So is retirement still a thing for you? Even with
let's
the
say that
apocalypse, are you going to
I'd like to
reevaluate
look at it
things
this
after?
way. I'm retired like Brett Favre. You know, when the money's right and a team is going, they need a gunslinger. I'm in.
Somewhere there's
But
an
the
arena
day to
team.
day,
I got you.
yeah, right.
Uh, but you're just retired from stand up. You still do voiceover work.
Sure.
You're still
Yeah.
do you still go to the Comic Cons if they ever have another Comic Con again. In
Yeah.
fact, you're doing voice work in a show that's on Netflix right now called Parasite with a Y, Para
Yeah.
SYTE.
Also, there's a show called Food Wars. I think it may have just ended.
Food Wars.
Yeah,
Are
Food
you
Wars.
are you a
Yeah.
chef or are you doing voiceover work?
Uh, well, it's a voiceover. It's an anime,
Oh, okay.
but it's set. It's sort of like an Iron Chef meets Magic Academy. So it's like these are chefs, but they'll have some sort of superpower,
All
and they
right.
compete in this competition called Food Wars,
Cool.
and it's an anime, and I play one of the judges. Is this very uptight English fellow who's never impressed with anything, and then I also play one of the chefs who's a big, burly Italian type of fella whose magic power is he can absolutely copy everything that the other chef does down to the molecule. And so he ties all the time.
Nice.
You can't ever beat him because he makes the same exact meal as you. And it's
Nice.
very frustrating. So that's his power.
So you've done a
Yeah.
lot of voice work. You've been
Hmm.
you've been doing voice work since what, 98, 99?
About 96.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've
But yeah.
done, according to IMDb, over 200 or
Yeah.
close
That's
to
probably, they're
200.
probably missing about another 200 on that list.
Okay. So you've
I've
done a
seen that one.
lot, probably more
Yeah.
than you remember.
Yeah. Certainly.
Uh, d- so the I guess the question was going to be, how many of these roles do you remember that stick in your mind, that
Hmm.
that you come back to? Or are they ones that were they iconic characters themselves, or were they characters that you've just done several times in a series? Or
Yeah. Well, there's some that are certainly more memorable than others,
sure.
because I don't watch anime, so I don't have. I'm like the Harrison Ford of voice actors.
I don't watch my
What?
damn movies. Get off
I
my
don't
island.
watch it. Yeah, I'm not watching that Star Wars. So, you know, my history and knowledge of the roles and characters is limited to what I do in the studio.
Gotcha.
So, but there are some that apparently are more appreciated by the fans than others.
Gotcha.
There's probably been a handful that are I'm known for, and I get every time I go to the conventions. That's the ones they want to talk about. One of them is a thing called Ghost Stories. I
Uh-huh.
played a little demon cat named Amanu Jaku, who sounds like a bad impression of Jack Nicholson, and he's a very wiry, dismissive, sarcastic, jaded cat who doesn't like hanging out with humans, and he's
So a
very
cat.
dismissive. Yeah, so a cat to the nth degree, and I played that one in that show, and that's one people seem to like. And there's probably a handful of other ones. Um,
Awesome.
there's one called Pedro I did in something called Excel Saga, where he was a guy who lost his girlfriend and now lives, or his wife. His wife was murdered, and now he lives in this sort of psychedelic um, alternate dimension. It's very bizarre, and it's anime.
That sounds, those
But
things
people
go
seem
kind
to
of hand
like
in
that
hand
one.
most of
That's
the
a very
time.
popular one too.
Yeah, so
So
I grew up with anime that was Robotech. Back
okay,
in back in the 80s, I watched Robotech, and then Robotech's now on Prime, and I'm like, "Oh my god." And I turn on Robotech and I'm like, "Oh shit, this is what I watched when I was
yeah, he kind
this."
of has a different memory when you're a kid.
Yeah, it was way cooler back then.
Yeah.
I don't I remembered it being way more exciting
Hmm.
uh back then. And I watched the first two episodes and I'm like, "Okay, I'll remember this as being awesome." Um
Yeah. No. No.
But clearly, there's some iconic characters, and we watched. I watched Parasite with my kids the first couple of episodes,
Mhm.
For y'all out there, Parasite it's a series. An alien comes and gets in this guy's arm. It's like a little slug, and it gets in his arm. And what it does is it gets in your body and it changes your brain. They assimilate your body or whatever. But this guy cut it off in his arm, so
Yeah.
the arm is the alien, and that's it. And
Yeah.
the
I
only
play
way that I
the
can
kid
describe
who.
this is it's entirely fucked up
Yeah. The
because this
kid who
guy's
has the arm thing is
arm
I
does.
play his father.
Yes, you play the
Yeah.
father,
He's a
and we're
drunken
watching it,
fool.
and the father does something, or the kid does something, and the father yells at him like, "That's Rob."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not all of your characters are an old man yelling at a young guy,
Yeah.
like you said
That's
with the
true.
cat and the other stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and you've done some various voices already on this, where you're
Mhm.
clearly not always. I mean, you have a wide range of voice characters that you
Yeah.
use.
I have a palette. I have a to choose from for
They're
each
not all
character.
Southern Judge or
Yeah.
Angry Old Man.
I declare. I declare. Yeah, there's not a lot of call for that voice in anime. I declare when we launched the space aircraft. I've been
Now,
trying to get them to do to give me the rights to an anime, and we just do an entire one that sounds like it's Southern Hillbilly, but don't even
but
try to make it seem normal.
but the
But
animation
they
is a
won't.
big, bulky, like Asian dude.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Hey man, how's it going? Man, what's going on? Yeah, that kind of thing. But they won't ever give me the rights to it. We did do one. Uh, it was Gamera. I think it was Gamera. It was a live action film that had translated. It's like Godzilla, one of those
Hmm.
kind of films, but it was Gamera, and he's the giant
Yeah, the big
turtle
turtle that
that was.
has the
Yeah,
rockets and
it's
spins.
like
Yeah.
Godzilla, but a guy named John Swayze got the rights to it, and he did that all in Southern. But these are actual Asian actors speaking like they're from Little Rock, Arkansas,
That's awesome.
and I play one of the soldiers in that. Yeah, he was very impressed with the size of the turtle and what kind of soup he could be made from.
All right, so
Yeah,
Gamera, let me
yeah,
get my
it's on
pen.
the DVD. It's on the DVD, but it's one of those secret code things you got to use to
All
find
right,
it on the DVD.
let's see
Yeah,
what I can find. It's gonna be
yeah. Good
fun.
luck.
Now, in my pre-show prep, went down
Mhm.
all kinds of rabbit holes with voiceover actors and voiceover processes and translation processes. When you're in the studio, do you actually see the video, and do you have to match up the translation so that the mouth
Yes.
flapping fits with the
Um,
words, or is it just
yeah.
they give you the cue cards, they have the reels, they put them on, they say go, Mr. Mungle, and you're like, no, 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 done, bye.
Yeah. Oh, I wish it was that way. That would be so much easier. But they actually have the actual. And most of the times when you're recording voices for animation, you would do the voices first. Like all those Pixar films, the actors come in, record the dialogue, and then they create the characters around the dialogue.
Sure.
But in my world, I come from the animation is done in Japan and it's done in Japanese with those actors. And so by the time it comes here, it's already set, and we have to fit in. If you see a lip flap,
Hmm.
you have to fit it in there.
Which is
Um,
the technical industry term,
yeah,
lip
lip
flap.
flap.
Yeah,
Yeah, lip flap. I'll
yeah.
tell you that the greatest three greatest letters in all of anime voice acting is MNS. When you see that in the script, it says mouth not. That means mouth not seen. And so that's when you watch anime in order to save money on production costs and recording. When they make the original one, they will give the character a ninja mask or some sort of mask that is got horns on it or some sort, just so it covers the mouth, so you don't have to animate the mouth moving. You can
Ah,
save every time you animate a mouth movement that costs money, and so if you can
very
create.
fascinating, Mr. Mungle.
Yeah, it's like that. And so whenever you see that, they'll film it from the behind. They'll film them. They'll see the character from behind talking to another character whose lips don't have to move. And so you see that quite a bit, and you can tell what's cheaply done and what's done to save money.
Gotcha.
And so whenever you see mouth not seen, that means you can do whatever you want and act in any way you want without having to match up the lips, which is the most difficult part of the whole thing.
That is amazing. I never,
Yeah,
I
and they
never
will
really
count
thought of
the
that.
yeah, matching the lips. It's gotten a little easier now with computer technology. You used to be, you had to be dead on. They would
Yeah,
record it, and they, oh no, you missed it by a flap. You got to do a half a second faster or slower.
right.
Nowadays, they can compress the video with a computer, and so you get away with a little bit more. It's a
Yeah,
little easier now.
they can speed it up, trim frames, do all
Yeah,
kinds of stuff inside of
but
it.
at the
Yeah,
beginning, if you couldn't, I would tell everybody who wanted to try out to do voice acting, I'd say, look, you can be as good as you want with voices. If you can't match lip flaps, they're not going to fucking hire you, because
right.
that's what they have to train. You have to actually train to do it, because you have to watch the lips moving while also simultaneously reading the script that they produce on the bottom of the screen, so you can
Yeah.
match it. Yeah.
So that's fascinating. That I found was the probably most fascinating part about
Mm-hmm.
the voiceover animation work that I had seen was the need to match it up because just in my limited amount of learning foreign languages, the length of
Mm-hmm.
like French sentences and American sentences are not the same. They have
Yeah.
way stupider words over in France, and I can't imagine
And they
how it
also
is in
lose
other
meaning,
countries.
and translation is lost
Yeah,
unless you can add or subtract words. And so it's they have people who are actually from Japan for the companies I work for who translate the scripts.
yeah,
And then the problem is they're not in the studio with the lip flaps. And so when you get in the studio, it might be 4 words too long
God,
once you
that's
start playing it
fascinating.
live. And so you have to figure out different words that'll fit in that to retain the meaning.
Yeah, and that goes for the same for Pokemon and
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh and uh, Kujigo and Diamond Go,
Hmm.
whatever those stupid card games are that are
Yeah.
turned into cartoons. I don't think it's an issue with Mario Brothers or any of the cartoons that I grew up with as
Yeah.
a kid because those were
What's
stupid
funny
American
is the people
cartoons.
who there are, I know people who translate American movies are made. They translate them into different languages, into Russian or Japanese or Spanish, and they have the same problem as I do, but even more pronounced because they'll have Alec Baldwin or George Clooney, and they have to match, Russian to George Clooney's lip flaps, which is even more pronounced. And if you can remember the old Godzilla films where they would just completely fuck it up, they
Oh
didn't
yeah,
give a damn. And so
not even
now they're
close.
much more precise. They try to be more precise with it. So
But
I know
it,
I know some. I know a guy who actually I met him at a convention, and his main thing was he would do Mexican George Clooney. He was the Spanish speaking George Clooney. He did George Clooney for a number of films. Yeah,
nice,
it was very interesting.
very cool. All right, well,
Yeah.
Rob, we are at the end of the show.
Oh, okay.
I told you I'd make this feel short.
Yeah.
Um,
Just
I'm
like prom night. Heyo.
plug some stuff. What do you need? What do you need the people to know?
Man, there's nothing to plug. Nothing's happening. There's nothing going on in the world.
Well, I'll plug for you. Go find Whiskey Brothers on the place you find podcasts
Yeah, you can find a podcast. It's called Praise Whiskey. It's at praisewhiskey.com.
on all the
We have
socials.
episodes, yeah, all the social medias. But if you
Yeah,
go to praisewhiskey.com, you can subscribe, and our shows come out twice a week. They're half an hour. They're not safe for work. It's 4 or 5
no, they're not.
comedians getting together and getting drunk and making fun of the day's events. So
Yeah,
praisewhiskey.com.
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I guess I should tell people to watch Parasite on Netflix.
Sure. Yeah. Buy anime.
Buy all the anime. Look
Buy
up
all.
Rob Mungle. I mean, he's fucking
Yeah.
funny as hell. Look him up. Do
I
some
try.
stuff. You can go find old clips of videos with him with hair
And
and a
actually, you can
mustache
find the Whiskey Brother stand-up comedy special is
on
still available
Amazon.
on Amazon Prime. If you're an
Yeah,
Amazon Prime member, it's free. It's the Whiskey Brothers, and it's myself and Sam Damaris and John Wesleyan and Slade Ham doing a hour or so of comedy. So
yep.
it's
Yeah,
fun.
that's right. Rob, John, Slade, and Sam, and
The original four.
it is fantastic. It is
Mhm.
it's a fun video to watch. Um, I had to watch it over a couple of nights because I kept watching it like before I go to bed, and I
Yeah,
have to. I mean,
for sure. What did I miss?
I'm older than I look. I'll
Yeah,
just put it that way.
like you're a
I'll
handsome
plug
man.
my
You're a
shit.
handsome man.
Say what?
You're a handsome man.
Ah, you're a handsome man yourself. What's the aroma in the beard tonight? What kind of beard oil are you using?
It's whatever was there last night. I haven't left the house today. I think it's orange tobacco or something like that. I think it's
Nice.
yeah.
Orange
I've
tobacco.
got about 20 of them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I did that for a
And I
while.
love the mask thing now. I love the masks we have now. The masks
you get
because when I
that.
put on the mask, I smell the citrus or the whatever flavor of beard oil I'm using that day.
Gotcha.
So it's very refreshing.
See, I used forest, like forest pine and like woodsy scents. That was the
Sure.
thing that I did when I had my full beard.
Yeah.
And then I ran out of the oils and I just hadn't messed with it anymore.
Ah,
Like,
well.
it starts getting
Put it
tangly. I
on, put
brush
it
it
on
out
your
and then I
ball
shave
sack.
it. Fuck it.
Put those flavors on your ball sack. It's lovely, I'm sure.
That's not for my benefit.
Right. Of course not.
So you can find our whiskey in Specs all across the state. Find Rob's stuff over on Amazon with the Whiskey Brothers, and on anywhere you find podcasts. And when the apocalypse ends, hopefully we'll be able to find you on stage somewhere.
Hopefully. Yeah, we'll see.
I might even be able to convince you to come out and make an appearance over at our distillery.
Uh-oh.
I've got what you want. I've got all the good whiskeys.
Cool. Thank you very much, sir. It's been a fun time.
Rob, I appreciate you coming out. Everybody out there, be awesome, stand tall, and drink humble. Wear your fucking mask and wash your hands. Cheers, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Good night,
care, man.
everybody. Let me where's my cursor? I'm gonna cut to the closing screen here. Whoop.
All right, buddy. That was fun. Thank you.
Hang on, Rob. Hold on. Oops.
Whiskey or Old Humble Special Reserve. They're clean, smooth, easy drinking whiskeys that taste the way whiskey should taste. From humble beginnings to an extraordinary finish, Old Humble whiskeys are what your bar needs today. Walk tall, be awesome, and drink humble. Old Humble Straight Whiskey and Old Humble Special Reserve. Get yours today.
Hey, if anybody's still watching, man, that was a ton of fun. It was a hell of fun with Rob. Thank you guys for coming on the show. An astute observer will note that I changed drinks in the middle of the show, but I did want to at least remind people the cocktail of the night was the Bombardier. It was a German beer with a shot of whiskey dropped into the beer, and we just drank it steadily like a cocktail, but you can absolutely chug that if you are down to do such a thing. Thanks a bunch for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it. Have yourselves a wonderful night. Be awesome. Stand tall. Drink humble. Cheers.